strategies for recognizing or overcoming self-imposed limitations? What would be some strategies?
Yeah, and it could be different for each one that people actually experience, but I think overall, the number one is self-awareness, right?
Mhm.
And I think with every coaching client that I've talked to, probably if I said it was 10, maybe 8 out of 10 where they didn't realize that they were stopping themselves from doing something.
Mhm.
So that realization and self-awareness, like, oh, I'm not doing that because of fear. Oh, I do get caught up in perfectionism or procrastination. So hopefully hearing something like this or something similar to it in addition, will be like, okay, yeah, the epiphany, the awareness of it first. So being aware and then being intentional and active around, okay, why? What's my why? Why do I feel this way? Why am I procrastinating? Why am I a perfectionist? And that has been as simple as that's what I've been taught. I feel like that's been my experience. I've seen perfectionists in my parents and my friends, and that's my standard,
Mhm.
right? And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it's just my experience. So, but if I'm aware of how that can hinder me, then I want to make a shift. I don't want to leave all of the properties of perfectionism off to the wayside because it allows me to have higher standards around what I present and what I want to be. But when it starts to become too much, that's when it stifles. That's when it slows down. That's when it stops me from doing things. So that awareness and then finding out the why, what's the why behind the things that I do. And that could even venture into a therapist as opposed to a coach, right? It could be deeply rooted into some things that you saw, didn't see, needed, didn't need, or gotten, didn't get
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
your past or your
Yes.
childhood.
Right. Right. Your past
But
related.
then, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
And so the awareness and the why, and then, okay, what can I do to help myself remove those barriers? So for perfectionism, what's my criteria? Or how many times do I look at something before I put it down? Maybe it's 5 times. Maybe it's 5 times someone else looks at it and I get it back and have a final time to see it or to do it. For fear, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And then figuring out how can you do it even with the fear. And that's anticipating what could happen and trying to be prepared for what's in your control, but also deciding what your action will be if it does not go the way you
Right.
want it to go. So thinking through those strategies in order to prepare yourself for something great and just be prepared for something if it doesn't go exactly the way you want it, how you can flex. What can I do to flex?
Right.
And then I think doing some of those things or all of those things will allow someone to start to go back to that construction example, to start to move the barriers so they don't detour or just stop. They can create the flow that they need to, especially if they practice those things over and over again. They have to
Yeah.
make it part of their
Right.
skill set, to be resilient, to persevere, to get past certain barriers that they put up and move them in order to get that flow going. And it's just so important to time, the time that you spend, the energy that you spend, and you could actually it could be self-sabotaging when you don't.
Mhm.
Because if you're completely aware and you're still doing something, that's sabotaging yourself from
Mhm.
from getting to where you want to be. I've often used the metaphor thought, if you will, if you're locked in a cage somewhere, you see visibly locked and you're in this cage, what'll happen when you find out that the key is in your pocket? You have the key in your pocket.
Okay. Mhm.
You can decide to get out of this cage that you're putting yourself in. And that's what the self-imposed barrier is. It's that we literally walk up in the cage,
Mhm. Right.
lock
I
it,
got
and put the key in
it.
our pockets. We do.
Right.
And we're just aware that awareness of the key is just like I can get out of here anytime I want to,
Too.
but I have to decide when and why and never go near this cage again.
Right.
But if I do, and if I get in, I know I still have the key in my pocket.
Right. You have to keep back. I like that analogy. I'm gonna keep that. In a cage with the key
Please
in
use
your
it.
pocket. I'll have to think
Yes,
about
like
I'll
wow.
have to think about that as I go forward to and finish
Mm-hmm.
this little
Mm,
project that I have to get over. I said,
yeah.
you know what? Because I got the key and I know it. And but
Hmm.
a lot of times for me, I'll get to a point and I'll be like, you know what? I may have to shift, if something is going along and I'm like, this really isn't, I'm trying, but this is not working. And sometimes you have to realize it's a little bit of a barrier, but you got to know when you have to shift. Or like you say,
Oh yeah.
you got to open up that key, take that key and open it up. And
Yeah.
what happens to me when that I do that,
Hmm.
it's like everything is it's like the floodgates open. It
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
everything just comes on out and just comes to fruition and what it was supposed to be. But
Yeah.
a lot of times it takes time for, us to get to that point, to open
Hmm.
that key and, step out and then it just flows. It happens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, when we think of last thing I want to talk about was talking about um well, a couple of last things.
Hmm.
When it comes to mentorship and coaching, okay?
Hmm.
Kind of practices, well, the one I like the cage analogy with the key in the pocket, but what can mentorship or coaching, how can it help um, someone that is in a fixed mindset or, has self-imposed barriers? How can mentoring and
Yeah.
coaching help them?
Well, if we keep going with that analogy, it's like a coach or a mentor could be standing outside the cage asking you questions
Hmm.
around, why do you feel like you're here? What would bring you out? What are your fears? How can you address those? And the more questions and thoughts that are provoked between the coach and the potential client, the closer they get to reaching in their pocket and opening that cage. A lot of times coaching is defined as unlocking the potential
Hmm. Yeah.
of individuals. And I know we talked about some people think a coach is like supposed to tell you what to do, when in fact, when I start with folks, I'm like, have you ever been coached before? Do you know the difference between a coach and a mentor? There are some similarities, but there's a very significant difference between the two. And as a coach, I want to be your partner in finding the purpose or the goal that you want to achieve. But I'm going to be asking you questions in order to do that. I'm not going to tell you what I would do. I'm not going to tell you all the advice in the world. I want to explore
Hmm.
your mind, your feelings, your thoughts around what you want to achieve by having a coach. And then with a mentor, seeing their accomplishments and asking them questions about their experience and asking advice, that's all valid. But knowing the difference between the two is so very important as well. Either can stand outside the cage, right? And you process the questions versus the answers differently, but it's so helpful to have someone there. And sometimes it's a friend, but with a coach and a mentor, especially coach, can offer you, it's like that deeper perspective of it, because we ask questions, but there's a method to our madness,
Right.
right? There's a method to it.
That's
And
true.
it's focused on outcome, it's focused on journey, and it's focused on impact.
Mhm.
And if that's what the individual wants, and truly, if they're asking about a coach or a mentor, it is. They just might not know what the journey with the coach is until they start to experience it. But it's often filled with epiphanies. And, I didn't even think about doing that, or I didn't even think about what I've accomplished before and how I could apply those same
Yeah,
steps
right,
to what I'm doing now.
right.
So we're here for a reason, right? And being helpful in supporting, at least that's my goal personally, is to support and serve others through coaching. And any way I can help, I will. And then I learn so much from the people that I connect with. It's such a blessing to me to know someone, to build that relationship, and an honor to for them to allow me in that space to explore what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Okay. Um, is there a leader, maybe that their example, a leader that you know,
Mm,
okay,
mhm,
and their example of how
mhm.
they recognize and overcome their self-imposed barriers, something you want to share, a leader that you may know, and how that leader recognized and overcome their self-imposed barriers.
Such a great question. I've had so many people that I've looked to and I've had so many experiences with. Uh, yeah, I want to think of a really valid example for you, but that question I didn't see, I didn't think about that one. Um,
It could be anyone. I mean, it could
mhm,
be anyone, that you know personally, someone that you
mhm,
know by reputation, someone
yeah.
in public life.
Mhm, mm. I guess I think of the self-imposed barrier as something that's almost discovered and it's not like out there for people. So I'm trying to think of people who have shared. I did work with a someone in the C-suite,
Hmm.
and they were tasked with a very big job. They got the job based on everything they did in the previous job, right? So what they did there, they couldn't do in this next position. And because the title itself
Hmm.
intimidated them in a sense, because the C-suite is like, at
Yeah,
the top.
yeah.
And although this person was close, she now she's here, right? And so the question that I think was very pertinent for her was like, can I do this? Can I do this? And but what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if they don't see me the way that they did before? What if I make this move and it doesn't work? So when that was the case, the way that they overcame it is to just get settled and centered in what they knew they had achieved, just kind of like what we talked about before. And it wasn't just the things that were achieved, it was the strategies and the actions and the things that they knew well
Hmm.
that would be applied to this new area of focus.
Hmm.
And when it got centered, it became so much clearer to know that what I've done before, yes, not all of the things in terms of the tasks are going to be mimicked here, but my skill set, my ability to flex, be open, and to support the people that I'm supposed to support along with the organization, that is going to help me
That's gonna carry me.
redefine
Hmm.
or create something new
Hmm.
that will allow me to be successful in this new role.
Self-imposed barriers, do you think most leaders need to confront, and why?
Confront for themselves or for other people.
Well, I would say for themselves,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I want to kind of think about it for
Hmm.
their own growth, their own benefit. So,
Yeah.
do you think that they need to confront, and why? It really doesn't say if it's
Hmm.
people. I guess it could go both ways. So, if you
Yeah.
want to
It
say a
could go
little
both
bit about
ways.
both, that's fine too.
Yeah. For leaders, barriers or self-imposed barriers that leaders could address or confront for themselves. All the ones we talked about, right? But I think the ones that really may hinder, and all can, but the ones that really may hinder is the fear of failure,
Mhm.
right? And also, I think it's the perfectionism.
Mhm.
It could also be the self-talk. And I know we didn't talk specifically about self-talk and the power that it has over us individually, right? If we feel and tell ourselves we can't do something, we're not going to the fixed mindset. If we tell ourselves we can, then we go into the growth mindset.
Mhm.
But I think that failure part, because if you are a leader, you're being seen, you're being heard, and you are in a spot where the light is shining on you. So if you trip, it's just as simple as if you're walking someplace and a lot of people are looking at you, maybe on the stage, and you trip, you instantly feel embarrassment,
Right.
right? It's like, oh gosh.
Uh-huh. Right.
And you can just kind of freak out about it, and you
Yeah.
can say, where'd that come from? It's
Right.
just like how you respond
I do it. Right.
to it, how you respond. And it's that's it. That's how you respond to failure. Is it. You can fail and sit in the failure and
Mhm.
stay there. But I've asked, are you going to uh, dwell or do something about it? You can dwell all day long,
Mhm.
but again, that's a waste of time. And you can take some energy toward it and like, this is, I met a coach a long time ago before I even really knew about coaching. And she said, if you feel a certain way about something, whether it's disappointment, anger, mad, she said, you have the right to feel that. She said, but here's what I want you to do. When you feel that, get a timer or look at the clock, look at your watch, and decide how long you want to feel that way, 10
Mhm.
minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. But when it's done, you have to commit to moving forward and seeing what you learn from that, and then making the changes that you need to make.
Mhm.
Because if you spend way too much time there, all that time could have been time that you've done, but you want to acknowledge how you feel in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with leaders, if fear of failure, moving into it, and you're teaching other people that failure isn't the end.
Right.
It's not the end. Making mistakes is not the end. Learning from them is just the beginning.
Mhm.
So that's so important. And then the perfectionism part of it, is, if you have to make something perfect, at least to define what that
Yeah.
is,
Okay.
right?
Right. I really
And
did.
then go against that criteria. And if there's those multiple times you're looking at something, decide what that number is, so
Mhm.
you can stop and move forward to do other things, because you're teaching people to do that too.
Right.
One thing we want to realize as leaders, that we're role models whether we want to be or not,
Yes.
right? And a long time ago, Charles Barkley said, I'm not a role model. If you're on stage, you are,
Yeah. Right.
whether
You're
you
wrong.
want to or not. Whether you want to be or not,
Not
someone is seeing you.
you as well.
Someone is seeing how you flex. Someone is seeing how
Right.
you're responding to things.
Right.
Even when you're a quiet leader, it's okay to be a quiet leader,
Mhm.
but you want to encourage other people to be who they are authentically too, whether it's a quiet leader or someone who is outspoken. So we have to realize that we're being seen, watched, and evaluated and assessed, even when we're not trying to be. So if that perfectionism is stalling you, if people can see the fear in your eyes, the hardest thing to do is to follow a leader that shows the fear, right?
Right. Right.
but
Yeah.
if they but if they acknowledge it and say we're in this together,
Together.
that's a different
That,
feeling.
that's the different feeling.
That's
Exactly.
the authenticity that you
Authenticity.
said before, and being vulnerable
Right.
around how you're feeling, but you're confident that we can move forward and move forward together.
Mhm.
That's a different feeling than
Totally.
scared.
Oh, right. I know.
Right?
I had a client, we just talked about that a few weeks back. It was like she told her team, she said, new person came in, over her and over her team. And she's like, I'm just as scared as y'all. I don't know what's going to happen, but I will keep you up to date. You'll know when I know. And so,
Hmm.
a team can grab onto that. Person can grab onto that because you see
Yeah.
that human side and it's right, and saying, we're all in this together. So,
Yeah.
instead of being, you know, afraid to be vulnerable and have that self-imposed barrier
Mhm.
between you and them. So, well, Nicole, this
Absolutely.
has been great. Thank you so much. You can come
Thank
back
you.
anytime.
Yeah, I will. Yes, I love it. I
This
love
is
it. Thank you
wonderful.
so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.